Join us on an inspiring journey as we delve into the world of Randolph, a poet, an artist with a wealth of knowledge and experience in spiritual and personal development. With 2 master's degrees and a passion for transformation, Randolph has over 50 years of exploring the depths of human potential. Welcome to the Happiness on Tap podcast, where guests dive deep into the vulnerable experiences that contribute to their happiness. I am Leanne Herron, certified health and life coach, owner of Finding Resilience with Leanne, and creator and host of this podcast. This episode is part of our Entrepreneur series. So thank you for joining us for Unleashing Possibility, a conversation with Randolph, poet, artist, and transformational coach. Hello, Randolph. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
Good. Hi, Leanne. I'm so glad to be here. I've thought about starting my own podcast, and I know now from talking with you how much work it is, and I'm not willing to do that with all the other work that I do. But I want to tell you that let's just start off exactly where I would like to in terms of, yes, my full given name is Randolph Nesbitt, and grew up with all of my family and acquaintances calling me Randy. But the fact of the matter is, in the last few years, I have chosen to use my name Max Gallegos as my pen name for my books, and I've got 2 that we'll talk about. And I also sign my artwork. I do acrylic paintings, and I signed those as Max Gallegos to honor my mother. My mother's maiden name was Gallegos, but the name Max, and oftentimes in transformation, a person's name might change, might be not the name that they've lived with for so long may just not resonate anymore, and they take on a new name. And my name Max came about when I was 9 years old. Should I tell you that story?
Sure, I would love to hear it.
So at 9 years old, my mother is a single mom with 4 kids. I'm the second oldest, and I was really my best and favorite babysitter was the TV, and it was hard to get me away from it. Black and white, of course, way back then. I was born in 56, and so I'm 9 years old, and my mother comes in one day and she says, "There's a woman who moved in next door, and she has 2 sons. Why don't you go see if they can play?" So I ran next door and I knocked on the door. It was many steps to get to their front door, and so I'm at the bottom of the step. And this woman came to the door. I'm sure she wasn't a giant, but to somebody standing at the bottom of the steps and my having to look up at her, it was intimidating. And I said, "My mom says that you have 2 boys. Can they come out and play?" And she says, "Oh, I'm sorry. They're with their dad." And she says, "Who should I tell them came by?" I've never been asked this before. And so I said, "Max." And I walked off shaking my head, not knowing where that came from. And a couple of days later, my mother says, "What did you tell that woman next door that your name was?" And I said, "Max." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "I don't know." And I started crying. And so that whole summer that they were there, and I don't know if the woman got back together with her husband or she moved back home to be close to her family, whatever it is. But that whole summer I was Max by those 2 boys called Max. And so I've used it off and on throughout my life, and mostly for many years just as my name at Starbucks, because it's hard to, at Starbucks, so many names, and they'll call and you going up to get a coffee, it's already somebody else's, whatever. And so I'd use that, name at Starbucks. But many years ago at a men's retreat for this small church that I attended, I said, Max really is what I'd prefer to be called by friends and acquaintances now. And so I came out as Max at that men's retreat. And so all of my friends, other than those that I worked for, that's too difficult to throw a different name to people and have to explain it all. And so I've been Max for a number of years, and it just really resonates, and it's just nice to honor my mother.
Thank you for sharing that story. And I'll just real quick talk about how I met you. And so if I refer to you as Max throughout our conversation or as Randolph, it is because I think I resonated with Max when we first met. Um, and so you were my score mentor for 10 months, very early at the start of my business. And I love to share with my followers, with my friends, with all of my entrepreneurs about the value and importance of working with a score mentor. And I always share and did along the way the things that you helped me remind myself of, previous work experience that I could now tap into as part of my business. Creating my small business networking group,
Mm.
and you really helped me kind of just utilize my skills and my knowledge and help me focus because I was all over the place. And so, I appreciated each one of our sessions every month because you gave me focus. And I just wanted to mention how much I appreciate the friendship and the relationship that we developed over that time. And to thank you for being a guest on my podcast.
So thanks for the invite. And I want to tell you that SCORE, if folks don't know what it stands for, this is back when, you pulled together groups of people to do something like the Army Corps of Engineers. It's called the Senior Corps of Retired Executives, SCORE. And they're not going to rename it or anything, but that's what it stands for. And it pulls together folks from all these different industries that have retired so that they're a resource, a volunteer resource, no fees charged for folks who are starting a business or in the midst of a business and want to improve it. And you were one of my mentees. And I'll tell you up front in terms, I'm so not surprised when you contacted me to be in the podcast um, um, because you, of all of my mentees, were the most driven, and I was never afraid to challenge you with things that I saw intuitively that I thought you might benefit from, and would put it out there. And lo and behold, we'd meet up the next time and you had done it, but you had also, wrapped it with a bow, or, baked it in the oven and created, the French whatever. You had just taken it to the nth degree, which was for me even more inspiring as a mentor, making me feel like I must be doing something right. and and the and it really is a relationship in terms of getting in front of somebody and being able to speak from a very honest place about yeah, yeah, sure, but have you thought about this? And you would put your mind to it. And very much inspirational that you contacted me and then here's what you're doing. I'm really not surprised, but I'm impressed. And I want to make sure that folks in hearing this understand that although I'm not a SCORE mentor uh, anymore, I had been doing coaching prior to being in Albuquerque and doing the SCORE mentoring, and some things are similar, but not quite. My intuitive transformational coaching that I do now is not necessarily to help, although I could work with somebody in terms of helping them to uh, um, improve their business in many different aspects, but my focus is on the individual, and I'm sure we'll get into that with some of your questions. But kudos to you, Leanne, for what you're doing and what you continue to do after our coaching, mentoring stopped through SCORE. It's amazing where you are now, and wish you all the best in terms of the podcast and working with others. I think you're a great resource, and I'm sure that you also challenge the folks you work with um, on a daily basis. And it's wonderful to have been a part of that part of your journey.
Thank you so much. It was, yeah, like I said, I was all over the place and I needed that clarity and guidance. And you've taught me things like I had never heard the term mind map.
Okay.
And so that really helped me kind of see where I was throwing my energy at the wall like a piece of spaghetti and seeing what stuck. Um, and it helped me kind of gain focus and slow down and fine tune those areas. Um, and I needed that. And so I appreciate the time that you spent helping me and making suggestions and reminding me of experiences and life experiences to really grow my business.
Well, you've obviously grown it, and I'm sure it will continue to grow. And my my feeling in terms of you reaching out is the first, and it's also the first sign for folks going to my website fearlesscoachingwithmax.com and reaching out and saying, I'm in transition, whatever that transition, whether it's existential or it's a divorce or it's career or whatever else, looking for clarity like you were. When they do, that's the first step. The second step obviously is then starting that relationship, which happens with conversation, and those can be uncomfortable if you're asking challenging questions, which need to happen in order to get at those nuggets. And so I think that your way of when you reached out, and that started with our working together, that timing was all yours. Basically, as a SCORE mentor, you're sitting there and you get leads every day that say, here's this person who's looking to be mentored, and you follow up on it. And some don't go anywhere, some don't respond. It's amazing, people being on the internet that just can click a button and say, yeah, I'd love to be mentored, and may not have even what you had going for you when you contacted SCORE, and we connected. You'd already started that business shuffle, and all the things that you were doing with your studio and everything else. You got clarity. I hear you on that. And my view of you, and I reviewed all of our notes from our meetings yesterday. It's just a clear climb and path from when we first met, and in all the things we discussed, to where we ended, is just like, and I know you continued on with someone else when I left, but the fact of the matter is, for that and our time together, there was this clear trajectory that said, which is important for all the things that I put in front of folks that I coach through my website, and that is application. Unless you apply it, you're just collecting more information. We've got way too much information and bombarded by it today, but it's the application where the truth, the rubber meets the road. And hats off to you for applying it like nobody's business.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I try to do that as well. But some of my education was focused on providing people that information, those documents. And as I started to coach people, that really didn't resonate with me as much as that deeper conversation with people and being that space for people to have those deep conversations, or maybe consider things that they weren't in front of them. And so I don't provide as much um, documentation to people as what I collected during my education to be a health and a life coach. Um, because you said, I think we have tons of information, and
Yeah.
the world of Google and everything else, there's lots of stuff out there, but I think people need that intimacy, that one-on-one connection. And that also kept me from only being a virtual coach. I really wanted that one-on-one connection, if I can have it, with people in my office,
Yeah.
because I think people are really seeking that connection, especially after the pandemic.
I think you're right. And what's really interesting in saying that, and you didn't say it specifically, but what I'm hearing is how I approach, if I came to the table to coach with someone who's in transition, uh, whether they want to transform or not, that's my end goal in terms of what I think about in terms of having somebody in front of me. But that being said, if I came to the table and I thought that everybody was exactly the same, and I'm going to give you, the six of this and the two of that, and here's this document, and go away and think about it and fill out this form or whatever. I come to that table holding sacred presence and being present and trying to stay out of my own way and noticing in terms of the conversation what comes up that maybe then in the back of my mind, my intuition says, ask this additional question or go deeper with that or whatever else, which you can't do if you're approaching everybody exactly the same. That approach, which is very intuitive, um, which has more to do with me staying out of my own way and listening deeply to my client. There are many ways that that's something, unless you're applying it and you really understand how your own mind can get in its own way, or I'm sitting here thinking of my response rather than listening to you and maybe what's even behind your words that you're saying. There's something, I don't believe in magic, Leanne, but I do believe in things that are magical. And there's something magical about deep listening with someone, such that um, you might be able to point out something to them that they don't even realize, where an underlying true root to a problem is, or a different way of looking at a situation. There's a phrase that was put in front of me a few years ago, and that was, rather than a viewpoint, rather than a point of view, you should have a viewing point. And where you set up that viewing point to look at things, to assess the whole situation, is more important than you sitting there and having a point of view, which we have a tendency to then, try and transfer to other people. Anyway, uh, I went off the bushes there.
No, no, thank you. Because it was something that I appreciated the education I received, because I had made a major change from 20 years as an accountant and 13 years working in legal. I needed that kind of basic information as I was learning it, but at the same time, I was coached and coaching for that whole, 200 hours worth of education. And that's where the gold was. It wasn't,
Yeah.
how to have people fill out a wheel of life, or, stuff like that. I mean, it's a good place to get people started thinking. And I actually attended an event recently with a life coach, and ended up winning. And I'm so excited about this because I start tomorrow.
Oh,
6 weeks worth of coaching
oh, nice.
with this life coach. But basically, she started her part of this event with handing out the wheel of life.
Interesting.
And so I kind of stepped back and went, okay, so I remember learning that, and I have used that with some clients, but it's kind of just a starting point, and I don't want to inundate people with you're going to leave here with a binder of information.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
There's something to be said for the workshop format in terms of leaving with a bag and a binder, and how was it for you, Jane? And leaving with what my when I coach, and each time along the way, and also definitely at the end, I uh, use the word recapitulate, especially at the end, in order to look back and then to re-examine what was said and shared, and and what was understood, and being able to do that is very different than you know being able to, I think you've seen my um, testimonials on my website, in terms of the honesty of folks, and what they shared is very different than, a five stars or bars or whatever it is for Yelp or whatever else. This is those honest comments in terms of going through and working with me, holding presence, at a table, working with someone is much more meaningful, and allows a look into, without getting into their details or specifics, and personal information of what is possible in working with a coach. And unfortunately, there's plenty of coaches out there, whether they're certified or whatever else is, letters after their names or whatever else. Have you met people where they're at? Did you provide open and honest conversations, and didn't back off from asking the difficult question, so that this person is at a different place, as they move on in their life? And that for me is the, sign that, I've done my job.
absolutely. And that's, kind of where I came up with the title, and something that I think is so important to people, is unleashing that possibility. People need to see what's possible for them,
Yes.
to make those transitions or transformations. I want to, quickly give a little bio about you, and then we're going to get into the questions, because
Sure.
that's
You
where
bet.
the meat of this conversation is going.
Yeah, you bet.
Um, so, as I said in the opening, Randolph is a poet and an artist.
And call me Max.
Great, thank you, because it's so weird for me.
Yeah, no, call me Max.
He has 2 master's degrees, an MBA, and a master's in human resource development. He has explored spiritual and personal development for over 50 years. His lack of focus for spiritual development is overshadowed by his ability to step into the flow state. And I love that, a lot of people don't understand flow state, so it's important, but it allows you to step into that flow state while writing poetry and creating your art. His last official role prior to retiring in 2021 was as a chief transformation officer for the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation.
Yep.
He is the author of 2 books, which we are going to discuss in detail: The Untethered Elephant, How to Reshape Memories to Increase Possibility, um, and, and a children's book titled George the Stubborn Caterpillar, which I'm absolutely intrigued with. And this book is not just for children, but it's also for adults. And he uses it to explore conversation about transformation. Both of his books are available on Amazon, and there will be links in the show notes. And Max is an intuitive coach for folks in transition in their lives, and he can be found at fearlesscoachingwithmax.com.
Yep.
So get ready for an enlightening conversation filled with wisdom, inspiration, and practical insights as we explore the transformative world of Max, the poet, the artist, and the intuitive coach. So let's get started. You explained how your given name, so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share with us your journey into the realms of spiritual and personal development, and what sparked that interest, and how has it shaped your life?
So, good question. And I'll give a thumbnail sketch of that, and what what how it started. As I'm stumbling with my words here, just because of um, there's always been this underlying attraction for and a desire for um, um, seeing and uh, connecting to the mystery. And so I don't know if there's anybody else out there that was raised a Catholic. I was raised Catholic and was an altar boy, and the whole mass is a mystery, with incense, and Latin is what it was when I was first started and being an altar boy and stuff. And this whole mystery that surrounded it. Um, uh, and so that in my early life just kind of caught my attention in terms of mystery, and that desire to understand it or get more clear or to see it better, or what is it that's behind the scenes, this uh, um, mystery of spirituality and of God. And so I did start in my early teens, reading and studying yoga and Buddhism. And I had an uncle who was a devout Zen meditator, and taught me how to sit Zen style, Zazen. And I just was exploring all of those things that would help, I was hoping, give me a peek into the mystery. And that, believe it or not, led to, when I was in high school, getting connected to a small storefront church and seeing that as, well, this is what's going to open up for me the doors into seeing behind the scenes for the mystery. And so, believe it or not, the first college that I attended out of high school was a Bible college up in San Jose, California. I was only there for a semester, and left. And it wasn't until later years that I went back to school as a working adult to get both of my master's degrees. But I still had this desire uh, to find out, to uncover things, and to get clear about those things. I'm less I'm less prone for that type of thinking or passion for that anymore, because of my own spiritual practice that I've developed. In that, for me anyway, the way I look at it, it's the 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 importance of mystery. Excuse me. I know I wrote down a quote here. The importance of mystery is not to figure it out. The importance of mystery is to um, go deeper within yourself in terms of your own realization about your relationship uh, with God or higher power, whatever you're going to call that, spirit, great mother, whatever. And I wrote something down. I'm in the midst of, I thought I was going to write a book that was going to unpack George the Stubborn Caterpillar for adults, and that'll happen at some point. But I'm actually going back, and I'm um, working on right now completing a science fiction book that I started about 5 years ago. In the process of completing that science fiction book, there's a character within that book whose name is Sid Curious. And I'll give you a quote from Sid Curious, who is not a real person and is a character created by me in the science fiction book that is not completed as of yet. And his Sid says this. This is very appropriate to what we're talking about. You can't slice up God like a roast chicken. The great mystery is not a puzzle or problem to be solved. It's a divine dream. And if you wake up, you will still have to water the flowers if you want beauty in your life.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Yeah, I grew up Catholic as well. And stepped away from the church at 17. A lot of that was because of things that happened as a child. But for me, it was curiosity. Like I also wanted to know and understand more, and not just what I had been taught, but about everything else. And even as a kid, I had an interest in the saints and in angels and, a bigger, broader picture. And that helped me stay curious growing up and trying different religions, going to different churches, learning about Buddhism and just different things in my life. And when I had children, I also wanted to give them the opportunity to expand their own knowledge and not force them into it as I was. I was baptized as a baby and I made my first Holy Communion and confirmation and did all of that. And at no time did I ever feel like it was a choice for me. And so I have spent my adult life offering choices. And I do that as well with, spending time getting to know different entrepreneurs through my podcast and learning about their stories, and working with a lot of people like metaphysical people and holistic practitioners, so that people have options, not just Western medicine, but, different options that are more around the energy of the body and how, things that we can learn or try outside of just being given a prescription or a referral. And so I did the same thing as far as religion with my children, was gave them options. And so my daughter has been really good about that in exploring and trying different churches or different religions or and she was lucky enough to find a partner that was the same mindset. And so yeah, I think curiosity and open-mindedness and having options are what and being educated and continuing to be like a lifetime learner, is what makes us a well-rounded individual.
Well, that's one of my mantras, by the way, is stay curious. And I may have to have that T-shirt made up for myself. But curiosity is something that I think we all have to some degree, but it's always very surprising to me when I talk with folks that, because I always want to find out more deeply and more specifically, about their personal life and experience and whatever else. It always surprises me, the folks that are not curious, because there's something about how we learn by being curious in terms of somebody else's experience. Yes, they also have a mind and they also have a body and they're going through life. But it surprised me whenever I've talked, to any degree to any of my siblings. You would think when we're talking, it's like, oh, you all grew up in a different house. It was no, we were all in the same room together, but she was sitting in that chair and that's how she saw it. And this is what she walked away with remembering or whatever else. And it's like, it just can be something that you you realize another person's experience, can add to, your appreciation for life. And so I'm very curious about others. I take a flight on an airplane or something. By the time I land, this one time I flew on an airplane, and by the time I landed, I knew, so much about the gas and oil pipelines in Texas. You can't believe it. Just because, once he said what he did, the still stuck in my mind is the most fascinating thing is there's this device that just looks like a pig, and they call it the pig, and they send it through pipeline under high pressure, to clean it out. And believe it or not, how far it travels and how fast and whatever else is just amazing. But um, that information is something that will always be with me. And what a great conversation to be interested in somebody else's, world, because their world is different, although we're in the seat next to each other.
And I think that's a lot too of why I really wanted to pursue podcasting was for those deep conversations and the opportunity to go deep with people that maybe I've known for years. My guests, I met her in 2012 through a weight loss program and competition. And we've stayed friends and acquaintances on Facebook over the years since 2012. And
Wow.
I've watched her children, graduate and grow up, and her relationship with her ex-husband and what they did together. And then who she became after her divorce and who she is now. I mean, she's this amazing power woman that, I get to watch her on stage with maybe 10 men, and she's the expert in her field for email marketing and creating email lists. But, she's that one woman on that stage with all these men. And the way they look at her is not what it used to be. They look at her for what she has created and how that happened. And having that conversation with her was so inspiring to me, and also reminded me that I was not using my email list the way it should be used. And so now our little conversations or messages back and forth have completely transformed in our relationship just based on that knowledge that she shared with me and with my listeners. And so now I'm constantly referring her out, or people, please, listen to this episode for value that can help you as an entrepreneur grow your business. And that's what I really love. And my husband always calls it my girl time. And he promotes that. Go spend time with your girlfriends and have those conversations and be there for each other. And so I love it. I love this opportunity to get to have those conversations with people and share their story with others, because it opens that world that we sometimes live in just our little space.
Yeah.
I'm ready to talk more about your first book, or talk about George the Stubborn Caterpillar.
George the Stubborn Caterpillar is actually my second book.
Okay.
Yes, I wrote this Untethered Elephant, but only put it out there as a Kindle book because I just wanted to be as cheap as possible and get it into folks' hands. And lo and behold, in talking to friends and family, everybody said, "Oh, I don't do Kindle. I don't do ebooks," whatever. And it was like I had to jump into it to get a physical copy out there, the paperback that's now out. But the fact of the matter is, in between the Kindle Untethered Elephant and the paperback, I finished writing George the Stubborn Caterpillar, which is a very interesting story. And we can talk about that one first. That one is a 30 years in the making story. And the reason for that is I was married and an instant father, married a young woman who had 3 kids and married, and we eventually had our own. So we had 4 kids, but was instant dad with 3 kids. And I wanted to have something to read to the kids that was a little more personal. And so I wrote this story, just, inspired to write it, called, George the Stubborn Caterpillar, and just started asking around for folks to, you know, who could draw it. Although I was doing cartoons at the time, I didn't feel confident enough to do the drawings, the illustrations for the book. And somebody put me in touch with somebody they knew. Oh, she's a wonderful artist. Meet with her. And this is way before the internet, way before smartphones, way before GPS. And so I met with this person, and all I thought to bring was this handwritten copy of the book. And I showed it to her. To know, yes, it's really interesting. Do you think you could draw that in the butterfly and the caterpillar? Yes, I could. And I let her take my only copy. I didn't even, make a copy at Kinko's or whatever it was at the time, some office, whatever. Anyway, and so she disappeared off the face of the earth. Was not ever able to get in touch with her. And so for over 30 years, once the internet came to be, I would go online and look for, was my book out there? Because she stole it. And lo and behold, it wasn't until a year and a half ago, Leanne, that I realized, what is it that I'm doing? I need to come out of my cocoon, and I need to just rewrite the book. And it's going to be better with all my experiences and how I really look at transformation. And so I rewrote it and found Kim Jackson, who's a marvelous artist and photographer in Albuquerque, to do the illustrations. And so the book couldn't be any more perfect than who I collaborated with to do the illustrations, and also a friend, old workmate that had a cousin that had written his own children's book, and so helped me to format it for the paperback that exists today. And the cover and the back cover are my paintings, but other than that, Michael Ivy is the one who did all the formatting for it. And so it's a wonderful collaboration, is what you see when and you really need others to step in and help you for whatever their specialties are. And it's about transformation of a caterpillar. But the fact of the matter is, when you dig in deeper in terms of the transformation, using it metaphorically for a person, it really has a lot to reveal, and the wisdom that's there. Whether you talk about George crawling into, by accident, a squirrel nest with all the nuts in there and taking hours and hours to get out of there so he can continue feeding. We do that all the time. People do that all the time in terms of coming to you as a client for coaching, in terms of, why are you spending all that time in somebody else's nest, instead of doing what you need to do? And yes, you do need to, on occasion, for what your transformation might be, just gorging yourself in order to, caterpillars do molt, lose their skin so they can grow bigger, etc. But the fact of the matter is, the transformation itself down the road may not be. And I always wonder this: does the caterpillar know that he's going to be a butterfly? Does they see that end goal and existence? And when he's a butterfly, does he see, like, oh, I get it now. And I remember being a caterpillar. I know as humans, we can be, when we transform, we can be, uh, um, we can remember. And what I want to share with you is I have my February blog post is going to be on transition and transformation. And let me read you this one sentence. And if you have any deeper questions about it, I'd be glad to talk about it. But uh, a, a client said, what is it, and can you differentiate between transition and transformation? Do you have these two different paths you're doing or that you're coaching on? And so in this blog post that's going to come out in February, I state specifically, transition is the dusty desert road you are on. Transformation is your arrival in another state of being. And so I coach people where they are in terms of their transition, whether it's existential, as I said, or divorce, or whatever life changes, looking for more clarity, job, career changes, etc. But the fact of the matter is, you may go and through transition and need a coach during that time, but not necessarily to transform. Uh, but it is possible. And I coach with that end in mind, but I can't force somebody to transform. You can lead a horse to water, whatever, you're going to phrase you're going to say. But the fact of the matter is, I believe each and every person has that possibility to be their best self, to transform into their most evolved self. Let's put it that way. And so my blog post will come out in February, and I hope folks can go to the website and see that, or see that through your website, etc. But it needed to be said, and I'm glad that I wrote it. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not necessarily coaching this client in transition, and I'm coaching this client for transformation. I'm coaching the person, holding presence for them, sacred presence at the table, and coaching them from where they are, and using my intuition with the end in mind that they could transform. And if that's possible, I would be glad to lead them down that road. But it's not something that I coach folks differently. You're doing transformational coach with John, and you're doing transition coaching with Jenny. That doesn't work that way.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I look forward to that blog post coming out. Hopefully people will subscribe to your website so that they can see that blog post, plus some of the other blogs that you have on your site. And I want to talk about your experience as an intuitive coach, working with people in transition. What are some of the common challenges that people face during periods of change, and how do you guide them through those transformative phases?
Well, understand that truly for all of them, the underlying feeling is like not having your bearings and like not being on solid ground. And so it's very uncomfortable to be in that position of transition. So let's say coming out of a marriage, coming out of a career that's 20 or 30 years long, and it's like, what am I going to do? Just existentially knowing and looking back, although I'm satisfied with and got my degrees, and my kids are now empty nest and got out of the house and whatever else, but there's something that's unfinished, let's say. That feeling can be very subtle, but I find to be very similar for each person in transition, although they may voice it differently. What's underlying it is this underlying discomfort of not being clear, not seeing clearly in terms of what could be next. And then what's really interesting, Leanne, is that when folks are in that, it's very difficult for them to pull back, which is one of the things I do as a coach intuitively, is pull back to look at the whole picture, to be able to ask those questions. It amazes me sometimes, and it's not a negative, like why can't they see this? And what they've been spinning in that for months now. They finally came to me. Why can't they see this? It's not like that. It's more like you're so close to the problem that you absolutely cannot, and so deep in it in terms of your feelings and your heartstrings or whatever else, to be able to pull back and to see that there's this ray of hope, that there's this piece of blue sky coming in to focus, whatever else, and to be able to ask those questions that oftentimes for me, my clients will do this very circuitous talking around what the issue is, and then be able to intuitively know, like, I'm going to ask you these tough questions. It's not like that at all. It's really being patient and compassionate and tender when you step into those things, so that people will actually hear you and have some type of an aha moment to be able to begin to see the way through. Right? What's that very it's a very wonderful phrase, but it's like the only way out is through. I don't know who that quote is. Anyway, it's not me, but only way out is through. And it's true. And the maybe that should be posted somewhere if I figure out who said that on my website, because that's true. And that's how I coach, is that they come to me and the only way out is through this, not by giving you a prescription in terms of how to deal with this, or here's the 10 steps, whatever else. And that underlying discomfort, lack of clarity, the ability to see that all this had happened, and some of it can be very negative, really has, and I hate to use that phrase, but I don't have any other right now, so I'm going to use it, but it's not silver lining. Anyway, I'm saying that, but it's really not complete enough for me. But anyway, and so, and it's not like I'm saying, like, yeah, you should really see that the wonderful thing you and Frida got divorced. I mean, that's that's not helping anybody. But those insights in terms of not just having realizations about your life and where you are right now, but being able to gain clarity about where you could possibly be. Because, and you know this, if we aren't pushed towards, springboarded towards, ride a bicycle or motorcycle towards, or skateboard or skates, or a hot air balloon or whatever, we're pulled towards our future self. And it's that clarity, whether you want to call it an avatar or getting clear about what your possibilities are, and being evolved, and what would that look like in 5 years, that pulls us towards it. We're not pushed towards it. We don't have to fight for it. And so getting pulled towards that image of who we can be in the future, once that starts to happen, I kind of just need to get out of the way.
Yeah, and I certainly understand that. And over my lifetime, had different friends or different people in my life who kind of did that for me, or helped me see different possibilities. 20 years in accounting for me was at a different point in my life where I was good at math. I had strong skills and understood accounting. and was given opportunities and opportunities and opportunities to use those skills. But it was just because I think, I look back now, that was at a time in my life where I needed that stability. I needed the financial benefit from working in that field. I got amazing opportunities. But I had hit a point where I realized that it was a very lonely career. I really didn't talk to people. I sat in an office and crunched numbers. Um, and it wasn't until I was provided, I had a friend kind of go, it just seems like you could do so much more with, who you are as a person. Have you considered this option? Because I was now in my 30s and going to college, and I was chasing after what I thought I wanted as a new career option, and had people sit me down and kind of show me the reality of what that change would have been and how that change would have affected me as a person, as a parent, as a woman, um, and give me opportunities and options to really step back away from where I thought I wanted to go and completely changed it into a different direction with my choice for my college degrees. Um, and it was considering things that I wouldn't have considered for myself because I
Let
just
me ask,
threw
let
myself
me
into it. Go ahead.
let me ask you a question. So, although I was not coaching as a strictly intuitive coach, I was coaching from the standpoint of the guidelines set by SCORE in terms of somebody wanting to start and or improve their business. But I still did bring to the table many of my modes of responding and working with folks that I did when I was in Austin first and was coaching intuitively folks in transition. And tell me if I'm seeing this correctly. Uh, but it was really important to me when I was coaching you that you, whatever exercise I was giving you, but that you began to uh, see yourself differently, whether you began to see what your possibilities were and what you could accomplish. And so I'm hoping that that is one of the things in terms of walking away after our 10 months of working together, that and I and I and I see it in terms of don't record every little thing, but record where we started, what exercises I put in front of you, what we met with next, and what you had accomplished, etc. And you were always a good student and did your homework. But the fact of the matter was, when we ended, I hope that exit was, in terms of having worked with me, that you really did see yourself in a different light, because that was not necessarily the direction or mandate by SCORE, but was important to me in terms of, this person, if they really want to do this, helping them to own that, see themselves clearly in that role, and also what is even beyond that possible. So did that happen for you in our working together?
Absolutely.
Cool,
Absolutely 150%.
cool.
And I think that is why I put so much emphasis and passion when I talk to other people about the value that I received from our coaching relationship. And that people understand as an entrepreneur, um, the options that are out there, and that it's not just, I'm interested in this free mentor, but having the different options to look at people's bios and backgrounds, and is that in line with the direction I want to go? And that I continue to provide people information to help them get to the direction they want to go in the shortest amount of time with the right guidance. Because I want, I benefited from having somebody help me get to where I wanted to go with focus and guidance and clarity than me just kind of, floundering around and wasting time and money and energy. So yes, you did 100% help me with all of those things.
Great, great. And there's no kind of end of the road, and fill out this survey and letting you know. So, and some of those things for SCORE is, people will drop off the map because sometimes there's no commitment because they're not paying for it. So it's like, there isn't that commitment or whatever. Most of the people really do apply themselves and do their due diligence, whatever. But then there's some that's like, if you can get it for free, then it must not have much value, which is not true, especially for the SCORE mentoring. But the fact of the matter is, you and in our relationship for that mentoring mentee relationship that happened with SCORE, although I felt that and I thought that as it ended, but I really appreciate being able to say this now and to you to share that. So I think my efforts were well spent during that period of time working with SCORE, and I'm hoping I don't have other folks that are doing podcasts now or whatever, but I'm hoping that there's others out there like you that have moved on and have continued to grow in whatever their business is. But just getting that one piece of feedback from you is really quite nice. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay,
Yes.
we'll get back on topic on you.
Yes. Yes.
My
Yes.
point
Yes.
here
Yes.
is to definitely spotlight you as
Yeah.
well.
Sure. Sure.
Let's talk about the untethered elephant and how it
Yeah.
explores reshaping memories into possibilities, because that is so important for people.
So, and what I want to share is, and I'm going to share, I have begun to get clear on what it is that I give people with my coaching sessions, and I'll talk more about that. But plug in and make a note to ask me more specifically about it. I give folks a dozen eggs, and that giving them that dozen eggs involves 6 superpowers that each individual has that you may not realize you have because they're so simple and maybe haven't really thought very deeply about it, and 6 paths to wisdom. And there's more superpowers and there's more paths to wisdom, but I concentrate on those because I think those are the most important. I don't list them as a list or 2 lists on my website because it's too easy nowadays to go through and see whether you're going to YouTube or you're going to Google or whatever else and saying, Google, what's the 10 best colleges to go to? What's the 10 most safe cities? And we think in lists now, and we think when we got that list that I've got that information, and so I'm okay and I can move on. And these dozen eggs that I give to people, and they're eggs and they're not seeds. And the reason they're eggs is because if you take them and you tend to them like you're incubating them rather than cracking them open and just eating them, then you end up with a chicken, and a chicken continues to lay eggs for you. My dad was a great little chicken farmer and always had eggs and loved to deliver them to his neighbors. They thought it was great to have those farm fresh eggs, and they are different. That's wonderful. But if you don't do that and you just eat them, they're gone. And so I call these the dozen eggs that I give people, the 6 superpowers and the 6 paths to wisdom. They have to come up in the in conversation with a client such that you're talking about them at the right time because they need to apply that particular concept in their life so that it becomes something they understand and then they can practice it. If it just gets given to them as a list, then we can go to coffee with a friend and go like, oh yeah, did you get Max's list of a dozen eggs? Isn't that great? It's like, unless you're going to apply it, it really doesn't make a difference in your life. So what I'm going to share, since you asked about the untethered elephant, is reshaping memories to increase possibility. I had attended a shamanic online course that was wonderful. I've got notes and notes about all of my journeys. I recapitulated all of those journeys in terms of what the learning was and what the message was, and wonderful. It wasn't just dancing around in fantasy. There was wisdom there. But for me, there wasn't the wisdom of application in terms of immediately making an improvement in life. So I began to explore, which is a part of shamanic journeying, is using your imagination. And I began to remember that I had a great imaginative life as a kid, and living with my grandparents in a little teeny town, in one horse town in New Mexico. Used to go out back with my friends and we would play Tarzan. We'd watch an episode of Tarzan with Johnny Weissmuller. We'd go out back and we'd play Tarzan. There's no jungles, there's no swinging from trees, there's no elephants, there was no monkeys, but we were Tarzan, whatever episode we would create. My sisters were doing tea parties and whatever else with invisible friends. Your imagination is amazing. We get disconnected from that when we get older and we forget how to use it. And so I created this way of using our imagination. And although I call it active imagination and reconnecting to that, it's not the active imagination process that Carl Jung created. And I talk about that in the book, and it's different. And I maybe should call it something, but it is using your active imagination to revisit a memory. And memories are not sacred, and it's not a video recording of that. And they can be very misleading and they can be misremembered. There's a whole talk in the book about why memories are not that snapshot or a video of that time. And if they are something that is a controlling memory, I call it, which continues to be troublesome to you, and I'm not talking about trauma or traumatic memories, which you wouldn't use this process for trauma, PTSD or other, but those controlling memories, and I list 4 of my own, and work with those and tell you how to work with those. And it's truly, when you look at the cover of my paperback book, the elephant on the cover is an elephant, but it's showing you with all the colors that I've painted into that elephant. Reshaping memories is about releasing the energy that that memory holds. And when you release that energy, you increase possibility. Our memories can be a store of energy. And so I created that for myself. And I did a 6-week test of one of those reshaped memories to make sure it worked, and it did. And so feel very confident with the book that I put together that it will work for others. It helps folks to reconnect with their active imagination that they used very easily without thinking about it as a kid. Why we stop using it, whether it's indoctrination and through school system or whatever, it's very sad. But the fact of the matter is, it is about reconnecting with that and then also learning about the energy that you can release. And so one of the paths to wisdom is reshaping memories. So I'm sharing with you today. One of the superpowers that I'll share with you today, of the 6 that I share when I'm working with somebody, is detachment. And detachment is less in the sense of Meister Eckhart talking about spiritual detachment and what he means by that, and probably more towards what Buddhists talk about with non-attachment, and probably leaning more towards what wonderful book, highly recommended, Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And so that being said, my my days of being out there where I say something happens and it's distracting me, whether it's a news story on YouTube or it's somebody cutting me off or whatever else, where sometimes I can just, I'm not going to let that drag me down. I'm not going to, waste any more time with that. And sometimes I have to say, I don't give a fuck. And it doesn't mean that I don't care, I don't have compassion, but I'm not throwing my anchor or my energy and lassoing that particular thing. And so that is a superpower, and we can all do it. We don't necessarily think about it and how powerful it is when as we go about our day. But that's one of the superpowers, and they're not 6 superpowers and 6 paths to wisdom, and they have to be in this particular order, and one is more important than the other. And the fact of the matter is that depending on working with somebody, I may not get through all 12 of those eggs, but they're there because they are those that I apply in my own life. And I find at 17 days now from turning 68, I wish somebody had shared those with me, 30 years ago. They're powerful, and we all have them, but we are not told or shared with that unless you go looking for something to improve your life. And like I said, Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, is a really good book. And my delving into a detachment with a client is leaning more towards that and non-attachment of the Buddhist practice, as opposed to spiritual detachment that is talked about by Meister Eckhart.
Wow. Wow. I foresee myself ordering your book and that book by the end of the day. Because
Good.
like it was going through my PTSD and my trauma, and never having had someone in my life sit me down and give me this roadmap, these tools, and share them with me. And so I've had to learn them a piece at a time, like meditation. Like I had practiced yoga for years, but my focus on yoga at that time was flexibility and stability.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with mindset or breathing. I would go to a yoga class, I'd do yoga, I'd go home. I'd feel great, but there was no deeper meaning, no deeper connection. And then when I hit the wall of overwhelm and trauma response, and I was in severe brain fog and memory loss and slipping into depression, and knowing that I didn't like any of those feelings because they weren't things that I had been taught how to work through. And so, adding meditation and starting from zero and actually learning about meditation and how to do it, and that it was possible for me to quiet my mind, who, I was like everybody else who says, oh, I can never quiet my mind, is going all the time, to say, yes, you can learn if you're open to learning, but knowing that that tool may not work for somebody else, but it was what worked for me. And to have something like you have created, these tools that you can say, well, these worked for me. And here you go. Here you can you can work through these, you can learn from these, you can have these tools, is such a valuable thing to provide to others.
Mm.
It's different from just handing somebody a book. Like,
Yeah,
I
or
need to tell
list.
you what this book did for me. And I just
Mm.
did this the other night in my women's circle. Um, was talking about how I got myself out of the brain fog and the memory loss because I was so afraid that this had become my new norm.
Mm.
Like I was just going to have to stay like this forever
Wow.
because it was so thick and so powerful.
Wow.
Um, that I spent the time saying, I don't like this. I need to find not necessarily a way through or a way over, but a way around.
Mm. Mm.
And so I learned things like attention, paying attention, like looking at things like using a flashlight and turning the aperture, and focus and building new memories and not necessarily focusing on past memories,
Mm-hmm.
because I was trying to get out of depression in the past and anxiety and worrying about the future and focusing on the present.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what having those tools did for me. And one of those tools was Brene Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart,
Mm-hmm.
which provided me a new vocabulary that was lost in that fog. And I wasn't able to verbalize what I was feeling and what I was going through, whether it was to my husband or to a friend or to a therapist, because the cloud was so heavy that I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't verbalize it. And so that book gave me something to sit down and one word at a time out of the, I think, 68 or 86 words that
Mm.
she broke down. And I was able to build new memories, new knowledge,
Mm.
and so I thank you for writing a book that was very personal to you,
Mm.
that you worked through, you tested, and this is what you now want to share with others.
Yeah, definitely. And it's what's so wonderful about it is and I realized once I finished that and it seemed like it worked, that I got to put this through the test. The fact of the matter is, there's there's nobody that I can imagine that grows up that isn't, we look at them and we don't even think about it, and we think they're playing in fantasy, or we think that they're, it's make believe, and there's a big part of it too, and I haven't expanded on that in terms of writing a book at this point anyway, but the importance of play. But the reason that play is so important is because of using our active imagination. But it's something that's innate to all of us in our mind, and for some reason, we have, whether we talk about somebody and they're in class and we go like, Jenny quit daydreaming or whatever else, we lose that, but it still is an ability of the mind that we are born with. It gets discounted, it gets talked about, and we get told that to not use it in so many words, and so we end up as adults not realizing, that superpower that we have. And so that one book that I've written and tested on myself, I feel very wonderful about. And by the way, it's a very short book, and I am going to step in next month at the end of February and do a large print edition of it. But right now it's a paperback. I think it's like 60 pages or something. But I don't. I have less patience with reading books with a lot of fluff, and I don't need to know every detail of your life growing up so I connect with you. I want to get to the meat, and this book is all meat. And I think that's, I hope that people find that that's what works for them.
Yeah, and I appreciate roadmaps. Uh,
Yes.
and I also, like with Brené's book, she does kind of have a lot of fluff and explains what they meant to her, like explaining what overwhelm feels like to her, what it,
Hmm.
um, and it provided me terms for consideration, like, oh, I'd never thought about that, or how she explained anguish, or how, just how somebody else explains something to you is very different than the definition itself.
Right. Yeah. I
Um,
can't wait to have you read my book and then also to get feedback from you. So I really do respect your way of looking at things and how your mind works. So I look forward to that happening. Um, and let me say the other thing about the 12 the dozen eggs, the six superpowers and the six paths to wisdom, and there are more beyond that too. This is the ultimate, and that's not my goal, is to give you the ultimate. And if you have these, your life is golden or whatever, you're going to be a millionaire. But the fact of the matter is that it's very different than I first thought about them as being. I've been thinking about this for the last couple of months. Am I giving people a seed, and they grow a plant, they have to water it? It's very different than giving them an egg, which then, if you hatch it, becomes a chicken and it gives you more eggs. It's more to do with that in terms of how you approach each of these concepts, as opposed to the uh, reshaping memories to increase possibility. And this is the possibility tree. No, this is the egg that hatched. You tend to it so it becomes a chicken. You get more eggs that provide you with possibility. I mean, there's just things as they are in the world are really more fractal, or fractalicious is the word I use, than they are about, and here we got it, and here's the book, and we're done, or here's the piece of chicken or the candy or the eggshell or whatever. It's like, the I don't know if you know much about fractals, but there's just no end to a fractal, and you find them everywhere in life and the world and universe. Um, so yeah, this is very particular to folks tending to their own flock. And I think I'm an example at 68 that, it's never too late to uncover these things. I've spent, really only in the last 9 months, writing these two books. I'm working on 14 new paintings for an art show that's coming up. I'm not a powerhouse or, a marathon runner or whatever else. I do walk every day. But where's all this coming from? I can actually tell you honestly, I have no idea. So, and so it's flowing through me, wherever that's coming from. And I would hope that um, folks would. And I thought about this. I don't have any other way to say it, but my perfect client, Leanne, would be someone who would come to me, and I refer to it as GSD is what their drive is, and they want to get shit done, and so they come to me because yes, they're in transition, but they're looking at the songs they haven't recorded, they're looking at the books they haven't written. Do you see your life? And there's those exercises out there, and I'm sure you've done them, and they're wonderful in terms of writing your own epitaph. And what is it that is your obituary, and what does it say about you, that you'd like it to say about you, there at the end. And that ends up being your legacy. And so I have that kind of focus for where I'm at in my life right now. But I really would love to work with folks who are in transition and who want to get shit done. And they know what it is that they're leaving on the table. If they die tonight or tomorrow, you know, um, what's going to be on their headstone? What is going to be in their obituary? And there's another, I think of all these quotes, and I don't, like I shared that one earlier. And it's like, so this is a quote too. I'll have to look that up. So many people die with this, song in their heart. Um, and so that's a sad thing to me. Very sad. And it doesn't need to be. And oftentimes, I'm not saying everybody does need a coach, but oftentimes it's very difficult to do many of those things in terms of the way you look at the world, the way your mind spins, in terms of being able to think differently, to ask questions that you would normally not ask. And so that's the importance, this, being in that seat as a coach that you are and I am.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's funny. I love the the get shit done.
Yeah.
Um, Last week, I had the benefit of working with a psychic medium who I have
Oh,
developed a friendship and a relationship with, and she came in and hosted one of my women's circles.
oh.
And, you know, her whole purpose, and I'm trying to pull up the definition of that, how we advertised it, because it was just so powerful. Um, I know I'll get to it here in a minute. Lord, my Facebook is forever long. I should have had it in front of me, but I didn't think it was going to come up in this conversation. But it was finding that focus, all of us coming together to find, to look at our life's purpose. And she broke it up into needs, wants, and need wants. And she
Mm,
asked these deep questions that we all had to answer individually for ourselves, at the same time, kind of providing uh, guidance through different imagery on
mm,
different tarot and oracle cards. So part of what I did was I got to pass out these different cards to different places where the women would sit. And she was like, just trust your intuition. It has nothing to do with where you want somebody to sit, but where they choose to sit. And so I had my own plate with my own cards. And I didn't look at anything, I didn't read anything, I just followed my intuition. And as we worked through this process, one of the cards specific to me was get shit done. So I actually have a picture of that card and what that meant, to me. So it's funny that um,
yeah.
it was embracing your soul's desires. And so it was calling all women who are seeking a profound connection with their inner self.
Mm,
And she
beautiful.
was that
Mm,
guide.
mm,
And the things
wow.
that were shared in community with my women, and the depths that we went into all of those conversations and those thoughts, and it was such an amazing experience, not only
Mm,
personally, but to do it as a group.
mm,
People, like one of my guests was my hypnotherapist,
mm,
and she's been that person that has helped me work through some of that deep stuff that you can't always do alone.
mhm.
um, or I found that it wasn't a safe space to try to do those things
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
um, and what she's provided to me as far as letting go and learning forgiveness of self, and just all of those things, but also other people that I've come in contact with who's reminded me about that childlike joy
Mm,
and that connection to help me stop dwelling on my issues of abandonment
mm,
and focus on the people who have stuck around. So
mm,
I'm
mm,
not trapped in that past,
mm.
but I have somebody to work with me in the present. So yeah, it's just beautiful how, when you said that, I had to laugh to myself, and I'm like, okay, I have the picture of that card on that, and what that means to me. And I remember when I started seeing my therapist and having that telephone intake conversation before I was assigned to a specific therapist. And I specifically remember her telling me, man, you're the perfect client. Like you're here prepared, you're ready, and you just need that guidance or that roadmap. And so yeah, it's great hearing how you have brought that up.
Well, that's a mantra for me in my coaching. I just didn't know that there was a card for it.
I'll have to shoot you a picture of that
Yeah,
card.
shoot me a picture of it. So
And I
do you
also,
feel,
I want,
yo,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Do you feel like for the George, the stubborn caterpillar, and for the untethered elephant, that I've given enough uh, overview of those for people to understand, and or because obviously we wrote something and we want people to buy them, we want them to read them, etc. Oh, and by the way, I want to tell you, since you're in Albuquerque, they have copies of the book with not signed by me because I haven't been there yet to sign those, but signed by the illustrator Kim Jackson, who's a marvelous artist and photographer there in Albuquerque. And at Wild Birds Unlimited uh, by Sprouts, which is that little shopping center before you go down Corrales Road. What is it, at 528 and Ellison or something? Anyway,
Okay.
that particular store, because they have a lot of Kim's bird illustrations and other animals, etc., and sell, I think, her cards, greeting cards, or something like that. And so they have copies of the book there, so you don't have to order them on Amazon. And I found people also, since I thought I was making a great connection with both books on Amazon, and like people have told me like, oh, I don't buy from Amazon. I'm going like, okay, what? I don't know how to get it to you then. So it's great to have that location there, and also have here in Austin, for those listening that are in Austin, they have copies of my book signed by me of the George the Stubborn Caterpillar at Book People, which is the largest independent owned book store in Texas, I believe. And they're marvelous, marvelous bookstore.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure that once my core group of people who listen to my podcast also are my women who attend my women's circle. These are things that we talk about. And so maybe it'll be an outing that we plan and go and spend a Saturday afternoon in Corrales, which is always fun. And pick up that book, because I am very much a supporter, that I would rather have that
Yeah,
signed copy. Same with the
definitely.
art on my walls.
Yeah,
I would, even if I'm only able to buy a print from my
yeah,
artist, and they may have, a signature already on the original piece, which came through on the print. I want them to sign it again,
yeah,
because that is what matters to me, is that
yeah,
extra, you know, this is how this picture resonates with me. And knowing that you took the time to sign it and connect with me, that's all the gold. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure
yeah.
that'll
You're
be
welcome.
a planned outing with some of my girls.
Great. It'll be a good one.
I also want to touch a little bit on, you were talking about your art
Mm-hmm.
and how that is kind of growing and you've got that coming up. How do you incorporate your artistic talents in your coaching practice, or reminding people the value of that creativity? That, because I've always been a person who always said, I'm not an artist. I can't draw, I can't paint, I can't. And it takes somebody else, just like this literally happened Thursday night in this setting with this psychic medium. I kept saying, I can't journal. Like journaling was something that was taken away from me as a child.
Ah.
And so while I'm writing these answers to these questions, my needs, my wants, my need wants, she's reminding me that I am taking pen to paper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always something I've told myself I can't do. And
Huh.
so she reminded me
Huh.
that yes, I can. I'm just not doing it in forms of journaling.
And that's one of those things I stepped into it with you very early on because I specifically wanted you in doing a mind map to do it on a piece of paper and to do it by hand. Because there is something to be said, Leanne, and I don't remember if you ever did finally do it that way, for the physicality of doing that. Because you came back and you had done it on the
Canva.
computer, yeah, and done that. And I was like, no, 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 no. Anyway, so I love that she's challenged you with that, and that it's something that you will probably have to still re-step into it. There is something in terms of whether we're told by parents or school teachers or whatever else, in terms of what their expectations are, and cutting us off from our deeper self. I get up in the middle of the night, and I told you this, that I keep my phone in a Faraday bag so I don't have the electromagnetic radiation pummeling me through the night. Just respect my melatonin and my pineal gland, etc. But I get up and I use a pen and paper, whatever that I need to write down and remember, and which is very different than me getting up and using my phone, and plugging it in on a list. And so, I try to stay connected with, and what do I want to say? Try to stay connected with the rather than doing something digital, I'm doing it. It's not algorithm. It's an A word, and I can't think of it. It'll come to me when we hang up. Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, and I appreciate her, and I do remember you guiding me to redo that, and I did. And now I've noticed that I'm very much a note taker.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love listening to podcasts. It's part of my morning routine. And I take notes, but it's not just a word for word what the person is saying, but it's how it resonates with me, as well as how I want to share that information with others.
Mm-hmm.
So I do definitely more pen to paper than I even realize. So good to know.
Good.
I have to think about it. I have to have somebody else sometimes remind me of those things.
I'm just glad that you're getting shit done.
I'm getting shit done. I'm absolutely getting shit done. And I've definitely developed the art of not giving a fuck. Because that's a tough one, especially
Yes, it
as a
is.
people pleaser.
Oh my God, yes, as a people pleaser, and as I was raised, as you really have to, depending on the family member or the gender or whatever else. I was raised to, be a martyr, and in being a martyr, you need to give a fuck more about that other
Yep.
person than yourself,
Yep.
which is life killing and soul killing and blah blah blah. But anyway, big deep conversations come from that, and if you can tend to that particular egg and hatch it, and you'll get more eggs from that and deeper learning. But that one it's at the top of my list, but it's not necessarily in a prioritized order. But the reason it is because how important it is.
Absolutely.
Very, very important. Yeah.
So what advice do you have beyond picking up your books? Because I think those are such valuable tools that you've created and you have tested. But what advice do you have for individuals who are, go ahead.
Well, let me go back to, I didn't answer your question about my
you're right.
painting
You're
and
right.
creativity. That's really nice to know that I remembered that, because I can go down the road and go like, there's something else. Oh yeah, my car keys. Yeah. Anyway, So my art, which I started very specifically and jumped in with both feet, is 1992 in Albuquerque. And for whatever reason, I started grabbing junk and pieces of material and copper and metal and glass, and I started making found art sculptures. How I discovered or what I saw in terms of found art sculptures, I don't remember, but I created 8, maybe 9 of those. And there was a record shop, LPs, on Central in Albuquerque called Spotted Dog. And Spotted Dog record shop also had the back of the store was a gallery. And I went up there one day and I had all my uh, found art sculptures I'd created in the back of the van. And so I've got this, you think you want to give me a show, and showed them, and they said yes. And so my first show was at Spotted Dog Gallery on Central in 92. My uncle lived in Albuquerque at the time. He's passed away since then. And he was the only family member to come to the show. But that started it all. And I still don't know where it came from. And then I jumped into photography, not just black and white photography, but infrared photography, which I just shot for 2 years, totally infrared film, and then black and white. And then I started doing printmaking and worked with a woman who was a master printmaker from the Tamarind Institute, very famous, world famous institute there in Albuquerque in terms of printmaking, and did prints for a long time on a commercial press. And then started doing acrylic painting. I combined for a long time my photography with my acrylic painting, and sometimes embedding some of those with different methods into my prints. And then I've continued to do artwork since then, and have gotten shows off and on in Albuquerque, Ricochet Gallery, which is now defunct, or Mariposa Gallery, etc., in Nob Hill. But I wouldn't say incorporating that in any way into my coaching. But thanks for asking the question, because here's the response as clear as I can make it, and that is my ability to step into that creative zone, to have a blank canvas in front of me and paints and colors I've chosen, whatever brushes or no brushes, and to start a painting and letting it to evolve, really has developed in me the ability to stay in my intuition and stay out of my own way, whatever's going to come up in conversation with the client, has really been developed and fed and harnessed from doing my artwork. So that's the connection.
God, I'm glad we didn't skip over that.
No, I'm glad you asked it, because I've not really thought about that in terms of why have I been able to, when I was going to this little church here in Austin, and told the pastor one day, I know myself going through this divorce at the time, or whatever the trend, work, whatever, I'd love to be able to coach and work with other men. And he started giving me referrals. That why was I able to do that? I didn't have the sense that I thought I could sit and hold presence for somebody and not say, well, let me tell you, John, how I did it, and not be, the obnoxious know-it-all, or because I've got 2 master's degrees or whatever else. None of that matters. But being able to stay in that space is really something that has come from my using my and stepping into my creativity all these years. Good question. You're good at this, Leanne.
Again, I'm going to say, thank you for not letting me forget that I asked the question and then we got sidetracked.
I'm just so happy you're getting shit done. That's all I can say.
Again, I talk about, I have always said I'm not, I can't draw, I can't paint or whatever, but I can appreciate other artists. And the one connection that my husband and I have had since the beginning of our relationship 6 years ago was this connection to the local art scene here
Oh,
in
nice.
Albuquerque, and going to
Yeah.
art walk the first Friday of every month.
Yeah.
And, from the very first person that I met in a gallery that took time to talk to me, not only about her art, but about the gallery as a whole and
Ah,
hanging art. And, then over time, I was meeting all these other artists. And our entire home and the majority of my office walls are graced with art from these local artists that I have
nice.
met over the last 6 years. And then to be able to then bring these people in and have them as a guest on the podcast and have them share their story, of how they developed their talent and what it means to them, and I just all these beautiful things. um, but I also was able to, when I leased my space, and you and I have had this conversation, that was the one of the first things before even really having furniture or a desk, was that I knew that with my wall space, that I wanted it to be gallery wall space for these local artists, for their pieces that are,
Mm.
maybe sitting in a closet, that they're not currently showing in a show. And hopefully maybe I can sell a piece for them from the people who have come into my space. And I don't want any commission. I just enjoy the sheer blessing of being
Mm.
surrounded by this beautiful art. And then I get to have this one-on-one special time with my friends that come in and change out the art, or that I get to host gallery shows for them.
No, nice.
Um, and this has just been like such a blessing in my life, these people and the opportunities that not only have they given to me. The lady that I interviewed yesterday for my podcast, was one of my local artists that I happened to meet at a show, and we developed this friendship. And I'm a huge proponent of her art. I think I have like 19 pieces of her
Oh,
art in my home
wow. Oh, wow.
because I'm just so drawn to her medium and
Huh.
her imagery. Um, but that, the first month that I was open, that was my thing. I wanted to have a pop-up for my artists because that's what brought me such joy over the last so many years. And so all these artists came into my studio and we had a pop-up, and it was very early in opening my business, where I was still dealing with insecurities of my ex-husband being able to find me.
Mm.
And so I didn't advertise it the way it needed to be advertised to bring people into my space to see their art. And they were all so kind in knowing what I was battling internally, and supporting me in the 10 people who maybe showed up to this pop-up, and not focusing on, oh, that they're used to a much bigger turnout, more and more
Mm.
people coming to these events, but that they got to be there for me. They got to help me experience that from not only as somebody that was wanting to purchase their art, but wanting to share their art, wanting to support
Mm.
them in another level. And then I, was advertising on my website that I host gallery space. And I had a lady that I went to high school and middle school with reach out to me about her daughter, who is an amazing artist, who, if I could tip my monitor, I would show you all her art
Mm.
behind me. Um, and that she was this wonderful artist, but she didn't know where to start. And could her daughter come and talk to me and show me her art? And would I consider displaying it on my walls? And not only did I take that opportunity, that I brought in this group of artists who then spent that time with this new artist and talked to her about naming her pieces, about how to
Mm.
price her art, about having self-value, about connecting with different galleries and being at different pop-ups, and watching this young artist bloom and blossom. And now she is in the process of doing 30 backdrops for the Nutcracker.
Oh,
Because,
wow. Nice.
and it fills my heart on so many levels
Mm.
that to be given an opportunity for myself and to be able to share that opportunity with somebody else.
Nice. Yeah. Your studio is so much more than just where women come together and where you do your coaching, health and or life coaching. It's really quite a lot of good energy there. Yeah, I love it. I love it. So that's my connection with my creative side in terms of the coaching. And so there is a direct connection there, which I haven't thought about. So thank you for asking that.
Thank you for sharing that. So what additional advice, things that I can really provide tips for people who are seeking to embark on this personal development journey?
So other than I definitely have to point folks towards where I've applied my creative side and my energies in terms of writing both of those books, in terms of getting those to go deeper in terms of looking at yourself and pondering the questions you need in terms of gaining clarity. I will always recommend, now that I understand it in the big way that I do, regarding being in transitional spaces myself, how difficult it is to navigate those by yourself, to look at whether it's me or you or somebody else, who would be appropriate um, to coach you as a person and what your needs are, without it being focused on um, less on, let me turn you into, $1 million podcaster or $1 million artist, and more on looking at what's in your heart. And I think those three things you mentioned from your um, psychic that you had to lead your women's group in terms of needs, wants, and need wants is probably good things to look at and to consider. And in doing that, um, when you put those things in front of other people, and I'm not saying everybody, but there's a handful that you'll have, or maybe only one, in terms of a close friend or somebody you grew up with or whatever else, in terms of, you know, putting in front of somebody like that you can trust. Um, what do you think about X? My getting coaching, or what do you think about where I'm at in my life right now, or who do you see me as? Who did you mention? Who did you mention back when you were a CPA, and you mentioned somebody put in front of you and said, um, well, here's another opportunity or option, because you were looking at continuing school and kind of expanding that, but you then considered other things, and you were told honestly by someone in terms of who you were and what your possibilities were. Who was that person?
She was a paralegal at a law firm that I was working at where I was working in the accounting department,
Okay.
but I had registered to get my degree in criminal justice.
Yeah.
And she is the one who kind of inspired me or brought things for me to consider in how my skills as an accountant, my attention to detail, my ability to multitask, could benefit me should I consider maybe becoming a paralegal. And
Ugh.
I did. I actually left that direction in criminal justice. I eventually finished that degree, that bachelor's, after I completed my associate's in legal studies.
But she was somebody that you respected in terms of
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
her viewpoint in terms of what your capabilities were. And so, you know, and it sounds to me like maybe that those other considerations wouldn't have happened if she hadn't put them in front of you. And those are the things that I'm talking about in terms of what advice or uh, feedback or direction would you give somebody if you're not going to be the person who's coaching them. And that would be very simply would be seeking out the input from others that you trust, not somebody who's going to rain on your parade. You should go ahead and continue, and yes, get your MBA, and go for work for a top financial firm or whatever else. Somebody who's going to look at you. I mean, look at me in terms of what my artistic bent was early on. And it's like, what was this guy, at the end of his first marriage, and yes, I'm getting counseling or whatever else, but, you know, nobody ever said, where's this? And I've got a book that's coming today, and the book's called The Creative Explosion. And where did that creative explosion of mine come from in terms of like, what do you mean you're making found art sculptures? And what does that even mean? There's something going on in that person's head and mind, and the passion to be able to do that and apply yourself to say, you need to look at some other things. But it took years, and continuing to step into that. I was a training director for Budweiser, statewide wholesaler in New Mexico for years. God, talk about, I love training. I love getting in front of people. I did stand-up comedy for a while. I love that kind of stuff, but that had nothing to do with, my creativity or making art or whatever else. Man, I drank a lot of coffee when I was in that role in order to keep myself awake. I don't know if you did, doing your accounting, but it's amazing things we do to our body that we don't need to if we'll seek out and trust. Maybe I'm not seeing everything, and let me ask somebody that I trust to just say, how do you see this situation? And that's really the only thing I can say with that question, Leanne, just because I give the first hour of my coaching begins, and it's free. And it's free because I don't know if I want this person as a coaching client, and I don't know if they want me as their coach. And how do we find that out? You've got to at least take an hour, maybe an hour and a half with somebody to say, here's the things I'm going to share with you intuitively. Here's who I am. This moving forward, would that work for you? I don't know how you can have somebody go like, and this is what my program is, and it's called the Get Shit Done program. And you need to step in and hand me that check, and here we go. It's it's not fair to people. And so unless they're going to step into that 1 hour with me to see if it makes sense for us to be in a coaching relationship, you've got to seek feedback from somebody else in terms of what your situation is. And I've had people come to me and say, yeah, I'm getting therapy, but my therapist said, really maybe I need a coach. And so somebody who's honest with folks, and we all have maybe just few, is what helps us, turn direction and become a paralegal or open our coaching practice or whatever else. that's really all I can give in terms of that kind of, it's not really direction, but insight for somebody without sitting down with them, for that first free hour or hour and a half.
And that's perfect. It's always funny, those connections, and how I hear what you're saying, and I hope others do as well. Because I also do that free, you know 30 minutes, hour and a half with people, with that understanding between me and them, is that we need to know for each other
Yeah.
if we're the right fit,
Yep.
because maybe we're not.
Yeah.
But I am not about competition. I am about, the world needs more coaches, and if I can refer you to somebody that maybe I feel, based on that conversation, would be a better fit for you,
Yeah.
then that's important to me. It's not about like you said, it's not about the money. Here, just come and we're going to do this, and I want your money. I
Yeah.
want to make sure that we're the right fit for each other. And so that is very valuable information.
And if that
And
person understands and sees that, yes, I want to move forward, then them paying that fee is they're committed to doing it, because that is the worst type of client, is somebody who's not committed. And that was truly the experience that I had doing the mentoring for SCORE, Leanne, was because they weren't paying anything, they weren't committed. And so you go like, you didn't show up an hour ago for this Zoom session. What's going on? Oh yeah, I got busy. It was like they could discount what you were bringing to the table. And so there does need to be not a healthy fee or significant fee or over the top fee, but there does need to be a charge for that, because it does have that value. And I don't feel any way negative about what I charge, and I'm sure you don't. But part of it is someone making that commitment.
and I remember, when you were so kind and you referred me to the mentoring group,
Mm-hmm.
to speak with them as a whole. And one of the questions that Vic asked me, was my intention of sticking around
Uh-huh.
as a, a mentee to the
Yeah.
program, because it was a free program. And he
Yeah.
explained it in those terms,
Yeah.
and he shared that a lot of people, when they're getting things for free, just don't have that commitment and don't
Yeah.
stick around. And even though I was receiving those services for free, I appreciated and was hungry,
Yeah.
um, and gave my full commitment, both feet, both hands. And as you got to know me, if you gave me an assignment, I took it to heart,
Yeah.
and I gave it my full dedication. And I would separate out time that I wasn't focused on anything else but what you were asking me to consider. And so I didn't allow for any other distractions. Um, and yeah, I guess that goes to my dedication, and also, getting other people to have that commitment. But you can't make people commit, but
No. No. But if we feel like we're exchanging something that's of value to us, and money is of value to us, and here's what I'm going to be getting, then there's automatically there's some commitment in terms of, hey, I'm paying for this. It's very different if it's free. And I did just think of the word that, this is how my mind works now. It'll eventually come to me. I don't have to worry about it. The word I was thinking about when I get up in the night and I'm using a notepad and a pen or a pencil is analog. So during the night, when my phone is in a Faraday bag to protect me and my mind and my melatonin, my pineal gland, it's analog that I go. And so, yeah, anyway.
Man, we should have thought, I should have chimed into that word as well, because we were talking about the difference of the, digital,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
digital versus analog. Absolutely. And I do that as well. You and I talked about it. We don't have electronics in our bedroom. They're actually kept on
nice.
the other end of the house. But it's been learning those
Yeah,
things, reading a book and doing the research and learning about the distractions and what I don't want and what I do want. And I want,
yeah,
my bedroom is my oasis, not,
yeah,
if I want those distractions, they can be out in the living room
yeah,
before I go to
yeah,
bed.
yeah, yes, exactly, exactly, exactly.
I want to touch, and we've been doing this for a bit now, but I definitely want to cover. I asked you to suggest to me some resources for people other than the ones that we've discussed, the books that I'm going to add to the list, books that I'm going to look into, the Creative Explosion, um, Mark Manson's book, some other notes that I have here. But I did ask you to give me some recommendations, um, things that have made an impact in your life that you could recommend to others.
So yeah, it's really a short list, and it's one that um let's see, how do I frame this? It's really a short list, and it also, what's behind it is getting out of our comfort zone. Comfort zones are a dangerous element in our life, in terms of whether it's trying a new job, dating a new person, moving to a new state or city. The comfort zone can be just soul killing. And so, and some ways to get out of that is, one of them is, I'll say, is a retreat. If you can, if you can go on a retreat, even if it involves other people on the retreat or other people who are there. I'll give you a couple examples. The church that I used to go to um, had a woman that, um, when her mother died and left her lots of money, and what she did with that money is she went to around the world, the nation, not the world, but around the nation, to every retreat center in the nation. And she would spend anywhere from 3 days to a week in each of those places, and she would contemplate and she would journal and read, etc. And then she began to lead retreats here in Austin, and I attended several of hers. And she had very spiritual exercises that she would put in front of us to do during the 1 or 2 day retreat. And those, pulling out of our comfort zone, whether it's, engaging with other folks, or being asked to engage and participate in an exercise, go on a meditative walk, etc., seem simple, but can be very impactful. So I'm going to put in front of folks retreats, and also um, individual lone retreats, in terms of, being off on your own. Um, the other thing that I'll put in front of folks is to look up those things that you have put off for a while, whether it's, me taking up a guitar after a hiatus of, 40 years of not touching one, and getting a guitar, and not that you're going to become a rock star, but, just reconnecting with that side of yourself that was so excited about it, and revisiting that part of yourself that never really went away, and the desire or passion for that type of thing, music and performing music in your life, that's still there. Um, and then and they started out a while ago, and I've gone on some of those, but they seem to have dropped off, and they don't seem to be as prevalent anymore. Um, and also, the number of, when my looking at them really just recently too, And those are the meetups, right? And so meetups of all different types of things in terms of learning about. One of the best that I did in New Mexico with my son is we both love the environment, especially around the river, the Rio Grande River, and the land as closest to the river, with all of the cottonwoods and all the other plants, they call the bosque. And there are a lot of trails that run through the bosque. And we did a meetup that was to learn about the plants that grow along the bosque. And here, and you can eat this one, and this one's dangerous. It was just wonderful sharing that experience with him, to learn about, something, in our environment that, you drive by it or you walk a path and don't think about it, was really kind of mind expanding. And so I'm suggesting things that can be mind expanding, but also, um, with the retreats, is going inward. And I don't know how to. I don't tout or state a particular type of meditation someone should do. I don't tout a particular spiritual author in terms of who you should follow, or I make fun that my roommate's dog Augie is my guru, and dogs really do make the best gurus, by the way. Anyway, but going inward, to seek your answers and to really begin to understand yourself. And so those are really the things that I would point out to folks, um, and and to trust that whatever you're drawn to, uh, in most cases, is what points to what is next. And the beauty of that, which I've stated for years, even in my role as a chief transformation officer, is that there's always a next. And it's uncovering what's next, that really, for most of us, is what we're curious about. And that's the curiosity that I see most often with my clients who've realized they need to get into a coaching relationship, and they really are curious about what's next. And they want to have someone in their life that will partner with them on that walk, on that journey, what's next.
I love it. I love it. And I'm sure you and I probably had this conversation during our time together. It was when I was learning about meditation. And I knew that I needed, for me, was, guided meditation. I needed somebody to give me things to think about, to focus on, to quiet my mind. And I developed really a draw to visualizations. Once I
Mm-hmm.
was able to quiet my mind, was to be able to then visualize what this person was walking me through and guiding me through. And one of the visualizations I did, what happened to be 2 years to the day today, um, or maybe 3 years, was visualizing my life's purpose, and so through this visualization, I actually visualized this space, my
Mm-hmm.
office, the furniture, the color on the walls, the color on my floors. Um, and that was the what's next, because at that point, um, I had already been struggling for about 4 or 5 months with this brain fog and memory loss and anxiety and depression. And I was working through it through meditation. And I was, what am I going to do next? Am I going to return to the legal field? Am I going to do something different? And, I was still in that unsafe place for myself, where the brain fog was still so thick that I couldn't see the sunlight on the other side of the fog. And so through meditation and visualization, I saw what was next for me. And what
Mm-hmm.
was next for me was not returning to the legal field. Um, and so just having that ability to go inside, to look at those places that I never would have considered. I never would have thought about being an entrepreneur. That wasn't even in my reality. Um, I was then focused, I had to, because I was so stuck in my past life of needing a certain monetary paycheck coming in to provide for my family, like I was as an accountant. I needed to make so much money to pay my bills, to raise my kids. That was in my 20s and in my 30s. And it's not who I am or what I need in my 50s. And so it was having that ability to go within myself and also have a voice guiding me to the what's next that made me not only visualize this place, but that I could be a coach, that it was something that was not even remotely in my purview, that came to me in a miraculous way.
Let me point something out to you. In your saying visualization, you're talking out about exactly what's in my book, The Untethered Elephant. That is not any different than your imagination, which is innate. And you used, without even thinking about it, when your mother said, well, go in your bedroom and play with your toys, and you created invisible friends and had a tea party, that was your imagination. That is not any different than the visualization you're talking about. You're using your imagination in that exercise, that guided meditation. That's the most wonderful thing that adults do. And they don't realize that there are other ways that they can use it, such as reshaping memories. Can't wait to get some feedback from you regarding the book. But you are reconnected to that doing visualizations when you're doing guided meditation. So um, they don't usually say that word, and in this I take this and they're guiding me and I'm doing the visualization. It's like that's your imagination that you used without even thinking about it as a kid. And so it's wonderful when adults do that because they can see that and realize that in terms of, coming out of it and, oh my God, I could be a coach. Yes, you just imagined it. And yes, you're using the word of visualization. That's your imagination. And so I think it's marvelous that the more, and I took a couple of days ago, I took a wonderful guided meditation and my imagination went crazy. It was wonderful, but uh, those are usually the only things that we do it because it's not talking about daydreaming. It really is can show you what's next. It can give you deeper insight in terms of memories that are no longer serving you, which you'll see in the book, etc. But it's more and more adults need to reconnect to what was innate and natural for them to step into as a child, which got buried for whatever reason in school or parents or whatever else. It's so important for the health of who we are, not just discovering what's next, but it's innate in us, and it's innate in us for a reason. It's there, and it should be used.
Wow.
and
Thank you, Max.
and and as you know, it helps you get shit done.
It did. Let me tell you, talking about get shit done. That was on January 31st. In March, I enrolled in school.
Wow.
My program was a year long, but could be completed in 6 months. In June, which was only 3 months into my program, I still had that get shit done, find the roadmap, because I knew what I wanted to do with this visualization.
Yeah.
to define my future. And by June, so 6 months after I imagined this, I was sitting in my space.
Yeah. Nice.
I had done the steps. I had found the person that gave me the roadmap for opening my business, what I needed to do, tax IDs, and how to get a bank account, because I couldn't accept payment from coaching clients. I didn't have a bank account.
And then
Um,
from that point, when did you contact SCORE?
I think you and I looked at it. It was August.
Hmm.
You and I touched on it just the other day, and I don't remember if it was
Yeah.
August or October. I want to say it
Yeah.
was August.
And the first one was, let's see where we are. Where is SCORE? Where are clients? Oh, here we go. Yeah, actually did a shortcut to your file. Yes, it'll be there. So our last session was Wednesday, 10th session, Wednesday, July 12th. And session number one was, Wednesday, October 19th.
October.
Yeah, it was October. Yep.
Yeah, I want to say, because I was still in school until September. I graduated the 1st of September, the 5th of September. And I spent September really throwing myself into additional education that I needed to be an entrepreneur. And that is how, between September and October, that I found SCORE.
Got
So
it.
everything was just
Yeah.
laid in
Yeah.
place for me as it needed to happen. And wow.
Yeah. Nice. I love it. I love it. Yes. And the um, the beauty of that, and looking back, and my notes that I have for my coaching clients separate from SCORE, and you know this is such, it's another level of learning in terms of, not that you did something wrong in a particular session, but you know, that was something that, you know, that worked, and maybe it's appropriate for this person also, and it lets you know, all those ways that you've engaged with somebody, not trying to duplicate it, but making sure, when I go back and look at them, as I know you probably do too, that I'm not leaving any stones, you know, not, you know, overturned or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, there's another thought there, and I just lost it. So let's see if it comes to me. So what else do you have on your list that I don't have anything else on my list that I put together in the middle of the night going analog to make sure I didn't miss today. What else do you have on yours?
Actually, no, I think we did cover, the questions that I had for you. Um, you did provide some really great reading list recommendations, which I am going to include in the show notes, as well as some new ones that you and I discussed in this episode that I think will provide tremendous value to people. But, tell people where they can find you. And thank
So
you also
yeah,
for sharing where I can pick up that book locally.
yeah, for
Um,
the George book, yes. And I'm
yes.
going to get your address, and I'll send you some copies of the paperback of the Untethered Elephant for you to give out appropriately to those you think could benefit from it. So we'll
Oh,
get that
thank you.
address, yeah, when we
Amazing.
finish here.
Thank you.
But fearlesscoachingwithmax.com is the website. I not only have a blog, and many of those posted that would be probably appropriate for folks to read through to see if those resonate with them in terms of seeking coaching with me. I also have my publications page, which shows the 2 books and links to where they are on Amazon, and the 2 places you can find George, children's book, but also for adults in terms of transformation, Book People in Austin, and the Wild Birds Unlimited in Corrales, 528 next to Sprouts. 2 locations for that. Don't have any physical locations, Albuquerque or Austin, for the Untethered Elephant.
Okay, so the Wild Birds Unlimited, that was specific to the
George,
stubborn cat. Okay,
Caterpillar. Yeah. Yes.
'cause I wrote
Yes.
it next to the other ones, so I'm
Yeah.
glad clarified that, because then I'd get there and go, well, this isn't the one I
Yeah.
wanted, but I'll take this too.
Yeah. And Kim has a relationship with that because she does paintings of artwork that is animals, birds, and others. And so she sells artwork through there. I think greeting cards and maybe stickers. And so they've, had her come and sign some of the books and stuff. And so they've got those, on tap.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much, Max, for your time, for everything you shared, for talking about, the eggs, which I think are amazing. And I'm really, really, really looking forward to reading The Untethered Elephant, because I think I'm going to have a very deep connection with it. And I also look forward to providing you my personal feedback and how things
Great. Yeah.
resonated with me. Thank you for, talking about your art and how that, kind of grew and developed and where that's going, because as you said, you're got more pieces coming up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really look forward to that as well. I want to thank you for your time. Like, this was an amazing conversation, well beyond, I think, any conversation we had in our 10 months.
Well,
Because that was focused on me, and this
yeah.
was my return to be able to, shine that spotlight on you, because you were such a value in my life when I needed you. And I really enjoy the relationship that we've built, during that time and since that time. And I really wanted to share about you with others.
I love that we see the trajectory of our relationship when it started and where it is now. And I feel so much like you're giving back so much more to me in terms of what I was able to provide you back then. And I really did stay in that very narrow window or path for SCORE in terms of how they want you to interact with folks. And it's not a negative thing. It's really appropriate. And it's not appropriate to try and extract somebody in terms of gaining them as, a client once you're done with doing the SCORE stuff. But the circuitous, the circle of life here in terms of having the opportunity to give to you what you needed at that time as a SCORE mentor, to now in terms of where I'm at on my path, to be able to have the opportunity to step into your podcast is just amazing. I love that, and the way life provides those opportunities. Thank you so much for this time we've had together, and look forward to our continued developing and growing, maturing relationship. It's really a wonderful place to be, to see somebody who is just taking the bull by the horns and where you are now, and also providing back to me, what is just way beyond what I think I provided to you. I looked through the notes and I know it was of value, but now in terms of being able to, with my being back in the coaching and have my website, it's like, God, I wish I could be in somebody's podcast. And lo and behold, I got that email from you. So thank you for what was next.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's funny because real quick, my theme for the month of February is open doors of opportunity,
Mm,
because it's something that had kept coming up, having my tarot cards read, um, that I needed to listen to those doors of opportunity. And so one of
mm,
my things is, if the door of opportunity knocks, walk through it boldly.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that is what my theme for the month of February is, and me being able to share how a quick visit with a lady turned into the opportunity for me to go and teach podcasting 101, and
Mm,
how I felt at the end of that class, how full my heart and my soul and just that circle, and what having those opportunities meant to me, and reminding people that we need to listen. We need to not fear those opportunities, because they're there for a reason. And, you know, talking about that with you today, has again brought that full circle uh,
nice.
for me. So I
Nice.
appreciate this conversation.
I do too.
Um, And for those of you who have stuck around for 2 hours and listened to Max and I hope we both have provided you a tremendous value in your life. If you enjoyed this interview, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Um, Happiness on Tap podcast is available on YouTube, on Spotify. Podcasts are a great way to provide on the go information and education. And I hope that I continue to do that for the people who want to hear what I have to say, want to resonate with my guests, and open that door to what's next.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Max. I
You're
appreciate this
welcome.
time. Um, I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. Um, so thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Leanne. Thank you.